Lecture 2, Stages of Counseling and Building the Counseling Relationship. Stage 1 of the counseling relationship process. The objectives for this lecture is to discuss the counseling stages, to explore counseling relationships, and to identify key ingredients of counseling. Included are empathy, genuineness, and positive regard. When we explore the counseling process, there are 5 stages. Stage 1 is to establish the working relationship. Stage 2 is assessing or defining of the presenting problem. Stage 3, identifying and setting goals. Stage 4, choosing and initiating the intervention. Stage 5, planning and introducing termination and follow-up. As it relates to Stage 1, establishing the relationship, there are several key factors that must be taken into consideration. As the name implies for Stage 1, what's most important is the relationship. Rapport or rapport building is also a very important ingredient for establishing the relationship. There must also be a shared purpose between the counselor and the client. Additionally, there should also be a therapeutic purpose or the working alliance. Additionally, there is a focus on the pre-existing conditions. What are the factors or pre-existing issues that brought the client into the therapeutic process? And finally, transference and countertransference, exploring ways in which the client projects their feelings, thoughts, or beliefs onto the counselor, and countertransference, which is looking at the ways in which the counselor project issues, thoughts, beliefs, and values onto the client. One of the things that is most important to remember about establishing the relationship with the client is that research shows that the number one ingredient and the number one predictor to the success of the therapeutic process has to do with the relationship. So Stage 1 is essential in terms of helping the client to overcome any barriers that exist. And in order to have an effective relationship, the client and the counselor must build rapport. They must identify the shared purpose, understanding the client's role in the therapeutic process as well as the counselor's role, and they must also establish a working alliance. And that is the process whereby both the client and the counselor come together to work on whatever the issues or concerns are that bring the client in for services. We also recognize that sometimes clients have pre-existing issues that must be addressed in order for the client to overcome their barriers. And then lastly, as we mentioned before, issues related to transference and countertransference are also very important in establishing the therapeutic process. Stage 2 involves assessing the problem. Counseling theories tend to classify the client's conditions as affective or emotionally based, behavioral or understanding the behaviors associated with the issues, cognitive, which represents the ways in which a client thinks It also focuses on misrepresentations of reality that the clients may have. And fourth, it focuses on systemic kinds of issues, contextual kinds of contingencies. And when we think of systemic issues relevant to our client, most often it deals with the structure in which the client functions. It might involve the family system, it may involve the environment in which the client lives, or it could involve the work environment. So the systemic context as it relates to assessing the problem has to do with the various systems that are involved in impacting the client's well-being. And it might be the family, and oftentimes it has something to do with the family as well as the environment or the work environment. Stage 3 involves goal setting. There are 3 stages in the goal setting process. First, the counselor's inferential skills. As counselors, we have various skills that are needed in order to impact growth within our clients. And oftentimes, it's theoretically based. If you're a cognitive behaviorist, you will utilize skills that are specific to cognitive behavioral theoretical orientation. So when we look at the counselor's inferential skills, that takes into consideration the theoretical framework that guides the techniques and the strategies that are used by the counselor. The second stage of the goal setting process is differentiating between the ultimate goals, the immediate goals, and the intermediate goals. Whenever we work with clients, usually we have specific goals that we are trying to achieve. Practical work has shown me that it's important not to exceed more than 3 goals. 3 goals that you are trying to achieve within the therapeutic process. In order to achieve the ultimate goal, sometimes there are immediate goals that we must attend to, or intermediate goals. For example, if you would like to focus on getting a client to work, we recognize that sometimes there are immediate goals that must come into play. For example, making sure that the client is free of substance use, or it might mean that the client has a consistent place of residence. So it's important to recognize that while the ultimate goal is important, there might be immediate goals. So, for example, making sure the person has a stable living environment, as well as intermediate goals that you would want to attend to in order to reach the ultimate goal. The third stage of goal setting is teaching clients how to set goals that are attainable. And while this might seem rather simplistic, you will be surprised that a number of clients are unaware of how to set goals, and that goals must be measurable and attainable. I always tell clients that it's important not only to have goals, but to write the goals out and to make sure that the goals are realistic and plausible, and that there are objective steps that must be taken into consideration in order to reach those goals. So again, just to review the 3 stages of goal setting. First, the counselor uses inferential kinds of skills, and that is specific to their theoretical orientation. Second, there is a differentiation between the ultimate goals, the intermediate goals, and the immediate goals. It's also important not to have more than 3 ultimate goals. And third, the third stage of goal setting is teaching clients how to set goals that are attainable, goals that are quantifiable and measurable. Stage 4 involves initiating interventions. And when we think about initiating interventions, what's most important here is the theoretical framework whereby a counselor draws their strategies and techniques. For many counselors, we might be drawn to a specific theoretical orientation. For example, for me, I'm cognitive behavioral in my approach. However, I also utilize some of the strategies and techniques from person-centered therapy, making sure that empathy, unconditional positive regard, and warmth is a part of what I provide to my clients. So in identifying the interventions that are used, we must ask clients what solutions or remedies they have tried. Clients have usually tried certain strategies or approaches, and while they may not have been successful, it's important to garner some information about what has been tried in the past. Second, we want to relate the problems to the interventions. Oftentimes, there are interventions that are specific to what the client would like to achieve. And third, we must help our clients achieve more successful behaviors. The fifth stage in the counseling process involves planning for termination and follow-up. And what's most important to remember is that termination happens in degrees. You cannot rush the termination process. It's important to make follow-up appointments, sometimes within 6 weeks. It might be in 3 months or even 6 months in advance. We also want to allow clients to cancel if there isn't a need for the follow-up services. So when we talk about termination by degree, it's when we start to see progress within our clients, it's important to let them know that they are reaching the stage of the therapeutic process where they can start looking forward to the end. Because as we know as clinicians, our goal isn't to foster codependence with our clients. It's to help them develop the necessary skills and abilities so that they can become independent and self-sufficient. So with that said, as we see clients developing their skills, we want to plan for the termination process. Establishing the counseling relationship. When working with clients, it is important that we feel for, attend to, understand, and genuinely work if we want successful therapy to occur. What is rapport? Rapport refers to conditions of mutual trust or emotional affinity within the relationship. Rapport is the entry point into a therapeutic relationship. The important takeaway point here is that rapport, having rapport with our clients, is the point at which we enter into a therapeutic relationship. Without rapport, without having that relationship, that therapeutic relationship that's built on rapport, it is difficult, if not impossible, to accomplish counseling goals. So what is the therapeutic relationship? The therapeutic relationship is conceptualized as 3 dimensions. First, there's the working alliance. That is the relationship that exists between the client and the counselor to achieve the goals of the therapeutic process. It also entails the transference configuration. That's where the client perceives the counselor as someone who could assist them in overcoming their barriers that exist within their lives. And the third dimension is also the real relationship, having that commonality, that ability to connect one human being to another. This is considered the real relationship. So there are various characteristics of the real relationship, and Carl Rogers was among the first American therapists to provide the conditions by which a therapeutic relationship can occur. And Rogers proposed 6 counseling conditions that he considered to be both necessary and sufficient to produce constructive client personality change. And when we explored the 6 conditions, the first is 2 persons are in a psychological. The 6 counseling conditions include 2 persons in psychological contact, one of whom is in a state of congruence, or they are integrated in the relationship. And basically, that person, the one person, at least one person, is the counselor. And the counselor is expected to be in a state of congruence. They are expected to be integrated in the counseling relationship. Second, the counselor experience unconditional positive regard for the client. They experience an ability to accept the client irrespective of who they are, what limitations they bring. That is unconditional positive regard. There is also empathic understanding of the client, and this entails the ability to put yourself in the client's shoes and envision what their experiences may have been as a result of envisioning being in that situation. And 4, counselors are personally integrated and self-aware. And this characteristic entails that a counselor is healthy. They are emotionally healthy. They understand what their limitations are, what their biases are, and they work to avoid these limitations and biases impacting the client. And when counselors are put in situations where they have issues that limit the extent to which they can benefit their clients, they have a responsibility to refer the client to other resources within the community or to other counselors. It's also important here that counselors are healthy. So if a counselor is dealing with issues related to their mental health, they must be healthy before they could provide counseling services to the client. So in this instance, it's also important that the counselor refers the client to a mentally healthy person, a mentally healthy counselor who is integrated and self-aware. So we recognize that as counselors, there are situations in which we have to refer the client to other counselors, particularly when we're going through issues of adjustment and we are not integrated personally, as well as when there are issues that limit the extent to which we can benefit our clients. Number 5, a client is valued as a unique individual. We are all unique people. Some of us may look alike in terms of skin color, maybe in terms of the geographic origin from where we may have come, but basically each individual is a unique being, and we have to recognize the uniqueness that exists within our clients. We also must understand how and what the client is experiencing. A healthy counselor-client relationship is what we strive to have. And so a healthy counselor-client relationship, it will increase the opportunity for clients to achieve their goals. This healthy relationship also serves as a potential model of healthy interpersonal relationships with clients. They can use these relationships to improve the quality of other relationships. And for many of the clients we see, oftentimes they have never experienced a healthy relationship. But it is through the counselor-client relationship that they come to understand what a healthy relationship is. And based upon this model, they can use this model to govern other relationships that exist within their lives. And so it is really important that we protect the counselor-client relationship, preserve it, and make sure that it is healthy. Because to damage that relationship compounds the negative perceptions that clients have about their ability to relate with others. So a healthy counselor-client relationship serves as a model of healthy relationships, and it helps the client to improve the other relationships that exist within their lives. Characteristics of the real counseling relationship. This entails counseling students can develop strong and effective empathic skills through their preparation and experience. A lot of people wonder, or I've had a lot of students to wonder, whether they can learn to be empathic in terms of working with their clients. And the answer is yes. Students can learn to develop strong and effective empathic skills, but this can only be done through preparation and experience. So what has to take place in order to develop these skills? Well, as it relates to cultural empathy, we have to help the client to understand that as a counselor, we have a genuine interest in learning more about that person's culture, learning more about that individual, learning more about their life experiences. We also have an awareness and a sensitivity about some of the aspects of the client's culture, but not necessarily all areas. We don't know everything about our clients. However, clients feel valued when we convey that we are interested. And sometimes when we don't know, it's important to ask, help me to understand what it means in your culture for this to happen, or help me to understand what it means in your culture when certain things occur. So asking for clarification or asking the client for insight is usually perceived as a positive, particularly if it's not done too much. It conveys to the client that you're interested in learning and understanding and seeing them from their own cultural experience. We also have a genuine appreciation for the cultural differences between ourselves and our client. And Sue believes that every interpersonal experience is a cross-cultural experience, because we are all different, we are all unique. And so we must have an appreciation for the uniqueness that exists between us, for the cultural difference that exists between the counselor and the client. So a genuine appreciation for the differences that exist between the counselor and client is very important in having an empathic relationship, and also conveying to the client that we have an appreciation for who they are. We also want to make every effort to use culturally appropriate language and help-seeking behaviors. We want to make sure that those expectations are conveyed in the counseling process. So clients appreciate when we are trying to be culturally appropriate. they appreciate when we are trying to understand things from their lived experience and from their cultural values. So one of the ways that we convey empathy when working with our client is to get a better understanding of their life experiences and their worldview. And I think it's important that we learn, and one of the ways in which we learn about clients' life experiences are through the courses that we take within a graduate program such as the Rehabilitation Counseling Program, but we also do reading on our own. And there are also instances where we just simply have to ask the client questions, ask them to help us understand or explain certain nuances that might exist within a culture that we may not be familiar with. In addition to empathy, the other characteristic of the real relationship is to be congruent. And what do we mean when we talk about being congruent? Well, the word congruence means that your words, your actions, and your feelings are consistent. What you say corresponds with how you feel, how you look, and how you act. Clients sometimes sense certain things about how they are perceived. And so if you want to convey that you value the client, then you have to communicate this to the client in your words and in your actions as well as your feelings. So making sure that you are consistent across the various ways in which we communicate. And when there are issues that we're not sure about or we may feel uncomfortable with, it's important to say to the client, I am not understanding certain things, or I'm not feeling comfortable with what just happened, or I need you to help me to have an appreciation for what you've gone through. Tell me more. And so the client doesn't expect us to be perfect, but they want to know that we are striving to understand them in a positive way. And it's important to convey congruence in our words and our actions and our feelings, and making sure that there is a match between what we say, how we act, and how we feel. We also must be spontaneous. And spontaneity is the ability to express oneself easily and with tactful honesty without screening what we're saying and using social filters. So basically, spontaneity in the client-counselor relationship has a lot to do with the spontaneity that exists in our relationships with our family and with our friends. We're not robotic, so we just simply have more relaxed conversations that are not full of social filters, where there is an ease of communication style between both the client and the counselor. So that is the essence of spontaneity. And lastly, there is the facilitative condition. And the facilitative condition is the counselor's genuineness. That reduces unnecessary emotional disturbance between the counselor and the client. So counselors are to convey genuineness, that they're being genuine, and this too reduces the emotional disturbance that exists when working with a client, and it serves to build the therapeutic relationship.